should requirements for energy efficiency, sustainability, and technical specification be issues for building regulations, or should these be addressed at planning with the result of further increased cost at the speculative stage of a development project? David, we'll start with you on this one. Sorry to bounce you straight back in.
Well, I'm really keen to see this because I don't want people to sort of post-rationalise or post-justify how their schemes are going to be energy efficient. And Justin mentioned earlier about how, you know, that's a fundamental part of when you're designing up a new scheme is how it's going to work and how it's going to, particularly in residential, to make sure that it is going to be energy efficient for those people living in the property. So, and it's a question that all our elected members ask at the process, the early stage, about exactly what renewables are incorporated within this scheme. And it's something that we want to make sure we're adhering to requirements. There are going to be further changes to building regs, which will help us. But most authorities are trying to incorporate additional wording into their policies to ensure that these sort of requirements are included, and it's got to be a good thing to make homes cheaper to live in for people in the future.
That's a fair point. Duncan, your thoughts on this? From are there any legal challenges available?
The thing about building regulations is that they are what they are. You know, you build something, it complies with building regulations, or it doesn't comply with building regulations. And I suspect that a nuanced approach to this is probably the way forward, and saying, well, there are things which it's appropriate to transition across to a building regulations standard, and that there are other things where a degree of flexibility may still be required, where perhaps there are multiple routes to delivering an objective in terms of sustainability or energy performance. And as long as everybody's clear about what the objective is, there are, you know, different ways to achieve that. Because otherwise you end up with a situation where you get, you know, a whole load of houses all with solar panels on the north facing roof, because building regulations has been amended to say every roof must have X percentage of solar panels. And you say, well, that's a pointless waste of time and resource and isn't going to deliver anything against the policy. So I think there are probably some opportunities to do it, but just watch for the unintended consequences of setting stuff down it too hard in stone.
Okay, thanks for that. Justin.
Yeah, no, thank you, Duncan. I sort of echo Duncan's points there, really. I think, I mean, for our company, we're pushing on an open door because we want to be heading this way. So we are already sort of going beyond building regs by choice. But I think what's really important is we understand. I mean, as Duncan said, building regs are building regs, so we know what they are and we know what's expected in meeting those requirements. I think if there are things that the local authority want to achieve, it just needs to be very clear at the planning stage. I think I'm reluctant to say let's bring even more into the planning stage because there's enough already to do. However, I think we do need to be clear. So, as David alluded to, we don't want to be in a position where we're starting down the road at planning stage that we then have to later change later on down the line. But yeah, echoing Duncan's points, I think having that flexibility, you know, I have my own issues around SAP calculations and talked about solar panels there, where you can tick a box to achieve something, but I don't necessarily think it's the right thing for that building. And it's very interesting looking at passive house as principles behind it, which help you understand how a building works. And so, yeah, solar panels on the north facing roof will tick a box, will make you hit a certain EPC, but isn't necessarily the best thing for the building. It's very difficult. We're talking about clarity, but yet I'm now saying we need to, you know, have a ability to be able to engage to say we might not achieve this, but we can achieve that. What do you think about it?
Okay, I mean that kind of comes back to a more collaborative conversational approach through the application process, I suppose. You know, this is how we're doing it, rather than as you say, I can tick a box and say we've complied, but it doesn't necessarily achieve what we need.
Yes, it does. But as I say, I think the requirements are clear, then at least we know what boxes need to be ticked.
Yeah.
But it'd be great if you can have those conversations
So if it were a performance standard that you're complied to achieve rather than a detailed specification.
Yeah, that might be the way.
Okay. Sam, you're the one that has to compile all this information and make sense of it and submit it. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm probably going to take a slightly different tact. I've always felt that sustainability, and particularly technology and performance measures, should be a building regs issue. Most of the clients I speak to, they if it's part of building regs, they know they have to provide it, they can cost it in, they can plan that in. What causes the confusion, picking up on Justin's point, is where it's unclear. Most councils have declared a climate emergency. A few councils have decent policies that you can measure your standards by, Teambridge being a good example with their carbon calculator. But a lot of authorities I deal with, and as David said, members' first question is, what's the sustainability? They know they want something, but they don't really know what they want. They want to see the chunk of renewable technology on the building. But actually that isn't necessarily the best solution. As we've said, sometimes it's a fabric first approach, and there's other ways of delivering it. So I think it's very hard to, as a consultant advising clients and having to prepare a sustainability statement when it is so vague. To my mind, if that was a lot more was put onto building regs, it would be level playing field. We'd know what we'd have to do, and it would be less sort of discretionary, and it's just something that could then be costed in.